Some say the Bible foretells a time when many will vanish into thin air. A time when the world is plunged into 7 years of tribulation. But can this really be supported by the Bible? Join us as we take a look at Left Behind, Fact or Fiction.
Hi, I'm Mark Finley. Welcome to another in our Left Behind No More series. Thank you for joining me here on Three Angels Broadcasting. I have a question for you. Simply because something has been taught for centuries, does that make it true? You know, scientists for a long time believed that the Earth was flat. Did that make it true? Scientists for a long time believed that the whole universe revolved around the Earth. Did that make it true, even though those scientists had powerful credentials behind their names? It was much, much later in the Middle Ages that a free-thinking Pole by the name of Copernicus came along, and he said, the Earth is not the center of the universe. The Earth is not the center of our solar system. The Sun is. And the Earth is actually moving, and it revolves around the Sun. Copernicus was ostracized for introducing that new idea because something had been taught for centuries. It must be true. Merely because something has been around for a long time doesn't mean it's true. Because something is popular doesn't mean it's true. Because thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, millions of people accept something, it doesn't mean it's true. On this program today, you may be in for some astounding surprises as we study the Bible together. My topic today is the Antichrist, the Tribulation, and Deliverance. Let's take a look at the sequence of events that lead up to that great event, the second coming of Christ. Let's cut right to the bone. Let's look right at the heart of the question and ask ourselves, what is the issue in the final crisis between good and evil? What's the issue in the great controversy in these last days of Earth's history? When you really look at the issues that are involved in what it means to be a Christian, the central issue is worship. If you look through the entire Old Testament, to be a follower of God, the central issue was worship. In the days of Egypt, when the Egyptians took the Israelites as slaves, the central issue was worship. In the days of Israel in Babylon, you have the challenge of the false gods and the true God. The issue was worship. In the days of Daniel, the issue was worship. In the days throughout the Old Testament, the prophets Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel called back to true worship. You look at the end of the Old Testament, Amos and Hosea, and the minor prophets called back to worship. John the Baptist called back to true worship. So down through the centuries, the apostles and disciples and prophets of the past focused on the subject of worship. So it should not surprise us in the last days of Earth's history that the central issue in the final conflict revolve around worship. In Revelation chapter 14, God gives his final appeal to the world. In Revelation 14, verse 6, he says, "Then I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those that dwell on the earth, to every nation, tribe, tongue, and people." An angel flying in mid-heaven. A heavenly messenger with an urgent message to go to the ends of the earth. A message that leaps across geographical boundaries. A message that goes to every language group and every culture in the world. The message says with a loud voice. Now, what kind of a voice? A soft voice? Not at all. A what? A loud voice. The message says with a loud voice. Why loud voice? To give emphasis. The message says with a loud voice, fear God. Now, that doesn't mean be afraid. The word there is reverence or respect God. And give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. In other words, we're living in the judgment hour. The clock has struck the hour. The destinies of the entire human race are to be settled. Then the Bible says, worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea, and the fountains of water. So here is a call to worship the one who made. What do we call the one who made? We call him the Creator. So here's an appeal to worship the Creator. Here's an appeal for true worship. Now, this must be very important. What is the basis of all worship anyway? We look at Revelation chapter 4 and verse 11. Why do we worship God anyway? What's the basis of worship? For you created all things, and by your will they exist. You are worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power. Why is God worthy of our worship? Because He is our Creator. So in the last days of Earth's history, at a time of evolution, God calls us back to worship Him as Creator. Has God given to us a sign of His creative authority? Exodus chapter 20. How do we worship God as the Creator? Once you understand this, everything else in the final controversy between good and evil and the conflict will fall in place. You have to understand what's the central issue. And we're driving home that point from the Bible, that the central issue is worship. It's our allegiance. It's our loyalty. What is the sign of true worship? What is the sign of our allegiance to God? Exodus chapter 20. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. Verse 11. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day, and the Lord blessed the Sabbath and hallowed it. Here you have it. Revelation says a message is to go to the ends of the earth, calling men and women back to worship the Creator. Revelation 4 says that the essence of all worship is the fact that God created us. Exodus 20 in the Sabbath commandment says that we worship God as Creator by remembering the Sabbath. So the Sabbath is much more than some legalistic requirement given to the Jewish race in the Old Testament. The Sabbath is an eternal symbol that God created us. It's an eternal symbol that we are His creatures. It's an eternal symbol that links our hearts to God, that we are worshiping the one that made us. Every time we worship on Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, Saturday, we enter into a heart-to-heart experience with God, the Creator of the world. Do you see why Satan hates the Sabbath? Do you see why the Sabbath will be a central issue in the final conflict? Because it speaks to the heart of who God is and who we are. God is the Creator. We are creatures. We come to Him with our deepest allegiance, our supremest homage, and our worship. Now back to Revelation 14. What is the central issue in the great controversy between good and evil? True worship, loyalty, allegiance, Sabbath. Worshiping the Creator. But there is a contrast in verse 9 given. Then the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast in his image and receives his mark in his forehead or in his hand, he shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out full strength into the cup of His indignation. So on this hand, we have the God that created us. We fall at His feet to worship Him. On this hand, we have a false worship called worshiping the beast. So here's worshiping the Creator, and here's worshiping the beast. Now, where does this central issue find its heart? Where is the center of conflict in the issue of worshiping the Creator and worshiping the beast? What's this all about? Revelation 14, verse 12 tells us. It says, here is the patience of the saints. Here are those that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. So the central issue is the commandments of God, and the central issue has to do with that specific commandment dealing with worshiping the Creator of the Sabbath. So the Sabbath becomes part of a worldwide controversy at the time of the end. The whole human race is called to loyalty to God. It's called back to worshiping this Creator God. It's called back to allegiance to Him, and the Sabbath is the symbol of that creation. On the other hand, there is the beast power, the Antichrist power, who's tried to change God's law. Are you aware of the fact that the Bible actually teaches that the Antichrist power would rise and attempt to change the very law of God? Are you aware of the fact that the Bible teaches that there would be an attempted change in God's law by man? The Bible actually predicts that. Let's look at it. Let's discover this amazing attempt by man to change the very law of God. Daniel chapter 7, verse 25 says that a power would rise that would think to change the times and the laws. A power would arise, and it would think that it had the authority to change the very law of God. What power is this that would think to change the very law of God? What power is it that would arise, and where would this power come from? Now, before we go on, we need to pause and go back to the Bible and look at Daniel, the 7th chapter. And here in Daniel chapter 7, we're going to discover just who this power was. We're going to discover how this power tried to change God's law. We're going to discover the identity of the Antichrist power according to the Bible. Now, let me remind you, the word Antichrist doesn't mean against Christ. There are some that think the word anti means against. Anti also means another. So when one claims the privileges and prerogatives of God, that one becomes another Christ. They try to take over or assume the position that is only Christ or only God's. In Daniel, the 7th chapter, the Bible describes the rise and fall of empires in the imagery of four beasts. Daniel 7 and verse 1 says, "In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. And four beasts came up from the sea, different from each other." Now here Daniel saw a windy seascape. And he saw four beasts come up out of the sea, different from each other. Now, what does a beast represent in Bible prophecy? In Daniel 7 and verse 17, the Bible says, "Those great beasts which are four kings which shall arise out of the earth." So the four beasts are what? Four what? Kings, or, verse 23 says, "Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom on the earth, which shall be different from all other kingdoms." So the Bible talks about four kings or four kingdoms. A king or a kingdom is interchangeable. There'll be four kingdoms that would arise. Now notice we're going to study these four kingdoms. The four kingdoms are represented as beasts. The first was like a lion that had eagle's wings. The first beast, or the first kingdom that would dominate the earth, would exist in Daniel's day. What nation overthrew Jerusalem that was ruling in Daniel's day? And was it symbolized in both history and archaeology as a lion? The nation of Babylon overthrew Jerusalem. And Babylon is represented as a mighty lion. Jeremiah says, "Babylon, you are a lion's whelp," in Jeremiah chapter 51. Archaeologists uncovering Babylon. And incidentally, the modern country of Iraq is the country that Babylon was located in. And the city of Babylon was located probably 90 or 100 miles south of Baghdad. As archaeologists have uncovered the ruins and remains of Babylon, they've discovered a lion with eagle's wings as a motif or symbol on the walls. They've discovered as well lion with eagle's wings in some of the old coins of Babylon. They have discovered a basalt lion with eagle's wings. The Bible says that another beast would rise, and the Bible describes that in Daniel chapter 7 and verse 5 as a bear. This bear has three ribs in its mouth. The nation that overthrew the Babylonians was Medo-Persia.